Hey guys, welcome back to more HOA stories. In this video, a homeowner association sent me over 80 parking tickets and put a lien on my home, claiming that I owed them $2,050. I don't even have a car. Here is what happened. Let's dive right into the video. So this entire thing actually started years ago, and that was when I got my first fine from the HOA. It was a $300 fine and it claimed that there was a parking violation in place. I cannot drive due to a seizure condition, so of course I don't own a car. I went to try and get it sorted out with the HOA at the time, but they told me that when there is a parking violation on the property, it's the responsibility of the owner to pay for it. Well, I didn't want to give them any money, but I was afraid that they would take me to court or something, or even try and take away my house if I just ignored the fines and allowed them to just pile up. So I did something that I know will have people in the comments saying that I was dumb for doing. I paid the fine. Don't get me wrong and think that I was just totally complacent about things. I was furious that I had to pay it. I felt like the rules they were telling me were wrong, but I looked into it and they did have it written that parking violations would be fined onto the homeowner. I understand the point must be for visitors to need to follow the rules, but I did not know whoever was parked wrong there. The main issue, I think, boils down to the fact that HOA had created all these weird rules about what time you can park on certain streets. And to make things totally clear, I know that in cities there are alternative side parking and only parking for a certain amount of time and stuff, but this was in a suburb and the rules were 100% manufactured and enforced by the HOA. At the time, I assumed that it was just a one-time thing and paying would be easier than trying to fight the HOA and get the rules of things changed. Well then, a couple months later, I got another fine in the mail for a similar thing. I paid it again, stemming from the same fear of trying to fight the HOA and losing. The fines were costing less than a good lawyer would have cost me, and plus, I was an HOA member and the rule technically existed despite it not being fair. And by the way, Ripe Stars, if you would have been in this situation, would you have paid the fines? Despite them obviously being BS? Let me know in the comments. I was paying every couple months for about a year and a half before there was a huge shift in what was happening. I started getting fines more often and for larger amounts of money than I just did not have. I was using all my savings on fines for things that I had not done. It was not fair, and I was told that since it was not my car, I should not have to pay the HOA anything. Well, between that and just not having the money, I gave up and stopped paying them anything. I had tried other methods to fix things, like actively stopping people from parking in front of my house when I knew they shouldn't, but I was not even seeing cars parked there. It was as if I was getting fines for cars that didn't exist, and the entire thing started to smell very fishy to me. As soon as the fines that I'd been gathering and not paying went over $2,000, $2,050 to be exact about it, the fines just magically stopped coming in. I was relieved thinking that they were fixing things, and I only mentioned the exact cost now because it will become very important later. The HOA contacted me and told me that with my outstanding balance of fines to them, I had a week to fully pay up. Again, I tried telling them that it wasn't fair and that I had no car and should not be getting citations related to parking to begin with. They ignored that plea along with one of me asking for more time or to work out some type of payment schedule. I still did not want to have to get a lawyer and all of that, but it seemed like I was getting close to being forced to do so. The week passed and I hadn't been able to give them any of the money that they claimed I owed them. They wasted no time putting a lien on my house. They were going to try and sell it all so they could get their money. I was scared of losing my house, and at this point was when I finally got a lawyer and explained everything that was going on to him. He looked over my file and in just one meeting made a lot of things very clear to me. I did not know beforehand that just because an HOA makes a rule does not mean that it is legal. It should be, but sometimes they are very sneaky about it. Street parking can only be decided by the city, and an HOA cannot designate no parking on the streets unless it is also an illegal parking spot like a fire lane or a hydrant. The second thing I learned is that I should have never given them a penny because it set a bad example. It showed the HOA that I was willing to pay for a fine I should not be getting, and in court they would use it as a sign that I was actually guilty of doing it. So don't be dumb like me, and if an HOA is gonna try and fine you for something you did not do, don't pay them even once. He also claimed that the fact that there were 87 fines for the same thing showed that it was excessive, and they would have to show evidence of cars actually being parked illegally each time if they were going to make claims like that to the point of wanting so much money from me. The last thing and the biggest in my opinion for this was I learned why they had stopped at the point of me owing them $2,050. It turns out that in my county, the minimum amount an HOA needs owed to them is $2,000 before they can legally start the process of putting a lien on the house in order to get their money. It was clear to my lawyer and myself that the HOA was trying to pull a fast one here in order to gain property by fining me just enough to legally do so. I did not want to lose my house, especially over only that fairly small amount of money in terms of property cost. My lawyer told me that the first thing I would do was file something that would force the HOA to pause the lien until I could argue the fines in court. Before I had gotten to court, I decided that I was going to do something else because I had a feeling that I was not the only person that was getting unfair fines from the HOA. I went to the local news to tell the story and urged anybody that was getting unfair fines from the HOA to call me and come forward. I expected maybe 1 or 2 other people at most, but I found that 14 different homeowners were getting charged by the HOA for fines that they did not think were fair. A lot of them getting the same illegal parking issues that I was, others getting fined for noise that never happened, or other things along the lines. Most people ended up paying the fines, and some even said that they threatened to put a lien on if they didn't pay everything they were owed. The big piece of evidence that we got was that all of these people who let fines sit ended up having everything stop when it hit $2,000. And well, those that actually let it sit and didn't just pay right away. The HOA saw the news and was furious at me for trying to call them out and defame them in front of the entire community. They were now saying that by the time they finished with me in court, they would have a lot more than just my property. People did not like what they were hearing on the news, and talking of getting rid of the HOA was all anybody was talking about. This is not a huge town, so gossip and hot news spreads a bit like wildfire. In court, the HOA was trying to first claim that I was illegally parking in front of my own house until I was quick to remind everybody that I did not own a car and did not even have a license since I could not drive medically. They pointed out their bylaw of it not needing to be my car, which I could see right away was not sitting well with the judge. My lawyer asked them to provide evidence that is required based on their own bylaws when it comes to citing residents. I don't think everybody knows, but bylaws are not just rules that the residents need to follow, it also has rules that the HOA governing body needs to follow, which they were not actually doing. When giving a citation that is automobile related, they have to provide either photo evidence or the license plate and car description of the vehicle in question. They had done none of that, which showed to me that they were making it all up. To put the nail in the coffin for the HOA, my lawyer pointed out that as soon as the fines hit the minimum for putting a lien on the house, they magically stopped. 87 citations, and then suddenly I was not getting anything at all. The judge could not fight the actual bylaws during this hearing, since it was just to show if the citations were valid based on the current rules, since they did not follow their own bylaws, though all of the citations were thrown out. Since I did not owe the HOA money anymore, the lien on my house was removed. That did not mean the court system was done with the HOA. We had exposed a major issue here and clear scam that they were trying to pull on people. The entire bylaws had to be gone over with lawyers, and anything even slightly ambiguous or out of their scope was removed or changed. So now they were playing with a fair set of rules. The one that I kept getting fined with was removed completely because a homeowner cannot be responsible for actions that take place on the street, since it is not the resident's property. That was not the last hit the HOA got though, since the news was still all over things and they were getting a ton of backlash because of it. Other residents were suing them to get their fines removed too, and it was clear that they were being scam artists and just taking advantage of people who wanted to live a normal life. The HOA stepped down from their positions, but we all knew that the pressure was forcing them out one way or another. After that disaster, nobody was actually eager to stand up and take over the HOA, so it ended up being disbanded just due to lack of interest in running it. I don't think they were doing anything good for the community anyway, so it doesn't feel like some big loss. I'm mainly just glad that I did not lose my house and fall for the tricks they were trying to pull on me. And the next one is titled Malicious Compliance with a $1 Million Consequence. And by the way, ripe stars, if you have watched until here, please don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already to not miss any of my daily HOA videos. Either way, the next one starts like this. I work in customer support for a company that provides specialized software to major players in the healthcare industry. Our clients are not your average users, they are hospitals, clinics and medical centers where downtime can have serious consequences. I've been with the company for 5 years and know our software inside out, so I'm often able to troubleshoot unusual problems and get things back on track without a hassle. A few months ago though, a new supervisor named Alex joined us. He was fresh from a corporate management program and came in with grand ideas about efficiency and productivity. In his mind, the solution to our slow response times was simply a script-only policy According to him, every client interaction needed to be scripted to prevent wasting time on unnecessary advice. No more custom solutions, no additional steps, no thinking outside the box. If a client's issue was not in the script, we were to log it, escalate it, and have them wait for a callback. Well, when Alex announced a new policy, I raised my hand explaining that most clients call us precisely because they are dealing with specific time-sensitive issues, sticking rigidly to the script which just frustrates them and in many cases fail to solve their problems entirely. Alex did not budge though. "Everyone follows the script and no exceptions," he said, smiling in that overconfident way that made it clear he thought he was reinventing the wheel here. "Even if our biggest client calls, you follow the script." Well, cue a couple weeks later. One morning, I pick up a call and I'm greeted by the CEO of one of our top clients, a massive healthcare network we have worked with for years. They hold a multi-million-dollar contract with us and losing them would be catastrophic. The CEO is calling in a panic because their entire system is down. The glitch they are dealing with is blocking patient records and diagnostics, putting patient care at risk. This is not just a technical issue, it's affecting people's health. As soon as he describes the issue, I recognize the problem. It's a known bug with a straightforward 5-minute workaround, something I've handled a dozen times before. Here's the thing though, the fix is not in the script. I'm immediately torn. My instincts tell me to help him to do my job and prevent a disaster, but Alex's strict orders echo in my head. "Follow the script, no exceptions." If I help, I risk my job. If I don't, I risk this client's contract and possibly lives. So then I do exactly as Alex told me to do. I go through the script step by painful step. The CEO is losing patience fast. As I drone through basic troubleshooting steps he clearly doesn't need, he interrupts asking why I am wasting time. I explain the policy and say, "I'm only allowed to offer solutions that are in our script. If this does not fix it, I can escalate the case and someone will call you back within 24 hours. He goes dead silent and then says, "Escalate it now." I log the issue as required, escalating it for a callback. Within an hour, word spreads that Alex has been summoned to an emergency meeting with our department head. Apparently, the CEO of our client had gotten in touch with our company's leadership directly and was not mincing words. He demanded an explanation for the sudden drop in our service quality and threatened to take his business elsewhere. Rumor has it he even said, "If your idea of support is running through a script instead of fixing the problem, then we are done here." By the end of the day, we all received an email titled "Script Policy Update." Effective immediately, we were now encouraged to use best judgment and to go off script as needed for high priority issues. Basically, Alex's entire efficiency plan was scrapped on the spot and he is now under performance review. It's safe to say that he has lost any respect from our team and I'm not sure his reputation will ever recover after that blunder. In the days that followed, the story of the client meltdown spread like wildfire through the office, growing more exaggerated with each telling. Some people said the CEO threatened to sue, others claimed that he had hinted at buying out a competitor. Regardless of the details, Alex's name became a kind of cautionary tale, a reminder of what happens when you put rigid policies above common sense. As for me, well, I've been doing my job the way I always have, thinking on my feet, solving problems, and trusting my instincts. The difference now is that I have a little smirk every time I think about it. After all, I was just following orders. And the next story is titled "Entitled Burrito Man." This one was posted by user Conscious Item 4493. Back during the pandemic, I was working at a Taco Bell. This was later in the pandemic, so our lobby was open for takeout orders, but not for dine-in. Most people still came in through the drive-thru. Me being the one to operate the drive-thru most of the time, I got to deal with all of the ordinary people who got upset when I told them things they didn't like. This guy, though, was a special kind of ornery. He first went through the drive-thru and ordered 2 different burritos. The first one he ordered, he said he wanted grilled, so I put it as grilled in the system. However, he did not say that he wanted the second one grilled too, so I put it in normally. Not 5 minutes later, he comes into the lobby to complain about his second burrito not being grilled and demands that we make him a new one right that instant. Since we were in the middle of our lunch rush, I inform him that it will be a few minutes before we can remake his burrito the way he wants it. Him not wanting to leave without his damn grilled burrito tells us to just grill the one we already gave him. However, if you know food safety regulations, you would know restaurants are not allowed to take food back after the customer has already handled it, and I informed him as such. Keep in mind, at this point I was nothing but polite, however, what he did next caused me to lose my cool and kick him out of the restaurant myself. He had stormed off after I had told him that we were not allowed to take his burrito and grill it, so I thought we were done with him, but when he comes back into the store, he slams the burrito onto the counter and smears it around. I was livid and my response to that was to yell, "No, get out! Get out now!" The good thing is I didn't get in trouble for talking to a customer like that, and my MOD said that if I had been her seeing the man do that, she would have beaten his ass. And now let's move on to the next story. It starts like this. I am an avid gardener and turned most of my backyard into my own little personal flower land. I take time out of every single day to either water or tend to them. Even if they don't need anything, I enjoy being out in my yard and looking at the beauty. I'm no decorator, but I feel the way they are planted leads to some nice color patterns. Like a lot of people looking at something you love, I felt like there was always something missing to make my backyard just perfect. Well, when I turned 40, I decided to spoil myself and pay for that one missing piece, which was a pond. It was not huge or fancy, but I felt like it really tied everything together and made my garden look amazing. It was small and a pump system let there be a small waterfall that I really enjoyed. It provided almost a white noise that made sitting outside with the flowers even better. The problem came a few weeks after the pond was finished when the HOA president came knocking on my door. I had never actually met him before or knew who he was. I think that made him like me even less. Me, hello? HOA president, I'm here about the pond. Me, are you from the construction company? Did you leave something in my yard? HOA president, I'm the head of the HOA that you signed into. Me, oh, well, it's nice to meet you. Did you want to see the pond or something? HOA president, I've seen it and I'm here to tell you to get rid of it right now. It violates the bylaws and I can give you so many fines for it, you'll be in debt for the rest of your life. I can even make it so you get foreclosed on. I have no idea why he came at me this aggressively about something that seemed so minor. Also, I was paying attention to his words, as when he said he already saw the pond, that raised a red flag. You cannot see it from the street or even just walking up to my front door. It was in the back, which meant he walked around my property without my consent. I knew that I was in the HOA, but getting my pond built required several steps. The first of which getting the building approval, which I was able to get with no issues. Since this HOA is mandatory, that means nothing against HOA rules could get approved in the first place. Still, I was going to look more into the rules before I said anything for certain. I had a bad feeling and told him to please send me a letter in the mail directly stating the issue and what rules my pond is breaking. As soon as he left, I went online and found the extensive HOA guide that all homeowners need to follow. I was glad for an online version because I could just search for the keywords like building, ponds, structures, etc. There was nothing that said ponds were not allowed, so I really didn't know what he was going off about. There was a rule about no in-ground pools, but this thing was nowhere close to the size or depth to be considered a pool. I did get a letter though, and it was just as vague, claiming that I was violating HOA rules with my newest structure and I had to remove it. Since I was not getting sent any kind of fine or told what rule I broke, I was not gonna destroy my pond. I started getting harassing calls from him stating he saw my pond was still there and he was telling me to get rid of it. He was getting on my nerves, so I told him that if it was against the rules to fine me for it, and then I could really see what rule I was breaking. However, no fines were coming in the mail, and I figured it was because there was no way one would get approved for breaking a rule that didn't exist. Instead, he decided he was going to personally do something about my pond. I still don't know why it seemed to almost offend him. And well, it was not a pretty sight when I came home from work one day and wanted to go relax in my garden. The pond was no longer running the waterfall, and instead the pond was filled to the brim with sand. All of my flowers were either stepped on or plucked right out of the ground, with sand covering that entire area as well. I was actually on the ground sobbing until somebody heard and came back to check on me, thinking I might have been hurt. A few people in the neighborhood know about my garden as well and love it when they are invited and come see it too. So when they saw what happened to it, they were shocked and wanted to know who was responsible for this. I knew that it had to be the HOA president, but I did not have any kind of proof to show that aside from his harassment to get rid of the pond. That might have been enough to take him to court, but I worried it would not be enough to win. The couple living behind me peeked over the fence and also saw the destruction and me crying. They told me they had cameras, and while it might not show everything, it might have caught something that I could use. They sent it to me, and I saw the face of the HOA president and him holding a large bag of presumably sand. That was enough for me to go ahead and sue him for destroying my garden, my pond, and trespassing on my property. We even threw in harassment charges just to really make sure that he got nailed with something. The video and constant harassment was enough for him to be found guilty. He was sent behind bars for destruction of property and owing me a ton of money to repair my land, my pond, and starting to regrow my garden. They also nailed him for fraud, since he was embezzling HOA funds and siphoning off money into his own pockets. It was gonna be a slow process, but I would get my garden back to its glory eventually. With him gone, I was concerned about who might take his place and what horror they could do to somebody else. So that was what made me decide to try and run for HOA president myself. I used my story to explain why I wanted the position and would put more of an emphasis on helping people rather than hurting them, as well as letting them know that if I found anybody in a position of power within the HOA abusing it, I would make sure they lost their position. People liked my honesty, and when it came time for the vote, I won by a pretty good margin too. One thing that I want to do with my new position is allocate some money to making empty areas in the neighborhood useful. With community feedback, of course, so everybody can get a say in what happened, since it was their money after all. I want to show people what a good HOA can actually do, so maybe there can be stories about good ones that help instead of more like mine, where they cause destruction. And yeah guys, with this we have reached the end of the video. However, if you cannot get enough of my content, please don't forget to subscribe to the channel to not miss any of my daily uploads. And also check out my podcast by searching for Ripe Stories on Spotify, Amazon, Audible, and other podcast platforms. You will often find exclusive episodes and early access to new content. Furthermore, please check out my Patreon by going to patreon.com/ripeyoutube or my YouTube membership program for even more exclusive stories. Thank you so much, and I will see you again tomorrow.